For example, I found the flaw in simulation theory, or at least the thing that destroys its likelihood, so to speak. There is no flaw, except there is. There's one thing all the simulated universes have in common that we do not have in common with it. I'll present the strongest argument of simulation theory that I'm aware of, and not necessarily debunk it, I think that's too strong, but show why it's not as likely as it first seems. Humans? No. So, simulation theory. 30 years ago, you have a game called Pong, which is basically 2 lines and a dot. Very, very simple. In 30 years, we've gone from that to literal VR that can trick your brain into thinking you're in the environment. If you assume any rate of improvement, even if you slow it down, at some point, unless something terrible happens to us beforehand, we will be able to create a simulation that is so convincing that we won't be able to determine the difference between it and reality. And then you progress far enough in that simulation, then in that simulation, they also make a simulation, and then in that simulation they make another simulation, and it just keeps going. You eventually get to a point to where you have billions of simulations, because in each simulation they get advanced enough to make another one. So it's simulations all the way down. So you have one base reality and billions of simulations. So imagine that you have all this on a dartboard. You take a dart, you throw it at the dartboard. What are the odds that you've landed in base reality? It's incredibly unlikely. The odds that you're in base reality is 1 in billions. It's incredibly likely you're in a simulation. Except there's one thing all the simulations have in common. And that's that they've progressed far enough to make another simulation. We are not there yet, which means we cannot be the simulations going from 2 to like 999 million, etc., etc. We have to be on one of the tail ends. We are either in base reality and we haven't figured out how to make a simulation yet, or we're in the newest simulation and we haven't made our own simulation yet. We cannot be in any of the ones in the middle. We must be at one of the tail ends, which means it's effectively a 50-50, and that is far less compelling to believe we are in a simulation. Once we get to the point where we've made a simulation, now we're back to the original problem. But until then, it's not all that compelling. But that is the flaw. It's not a debunk, because we're still at one of the tail ends, but it is the thing that destroys the math of it. If we were in a simulation though, it really doesn't matter. Until someone shows you how to leave the simulation, you still have to deal with the reality you're presented. And if you were in a simulation, there's no difference, who cares?